Welcome to Make It Happen with me, your host, Maggie. If fasting is a tool that you've tried before, maybe have considered trying, or maybe something that you use regularly, today's episode is here to break down the 5 biggest fasting mistakes that I tend to see over and over. They're also mistakes that I was personally making before I educated myself about some of the best ways to fast more effectively. My goal for today is to help you achieve the greatest benefits of fasting by identifying these common mistakes. And for you newbies out there interested in starting, I hope that today helps to catapult you forward so that you just start. There is no time like the present, and sitting back waiting does nothing for you. And before we get started, if you find today's episode helpful, would you please consider sharing with a friend, or 10 friends for that matter? And if you haven't already, please hit that thumbs up and make sure that you're subscribed to my channel. I appreciate it more than you know. Listen, if you are sleeping, you are fasting. So technically, we all fast. But if you're skipping breakfast or dinner, or specifically shortening your eating window even more than simply skipping a meal, you are using the tool of fasting as a way that can give your overall health a boost. We as humans have been fasting since the beginning of time. You've likely heard the comparison to our ancestor hunter-gatherers, be it from me or someone else. They literally had to go find their food each and every day, and they didn't necessarily have breakfast beforehand. They went out in search of food on empty stomachs and fueled themselves with, obviously, whole, non-processed foods upon finding that fuel. But even in recent history, we have been doing some sort of fasting. Think about just a few generations ago where so many Americans were farmers, for example. They likely had breakfast, maybe leftovers from the night before, went out and worked a full day, moving around, not seated at a desk, and didn't get home until after dark. They may have had a snack or a light lunch with them through their workday, but they certainly weren't snacking or having small meals all day long. They'd come home, have a big dinner, and repeat again the next day. And obviously, there are plenty of wonderful farmers living in this very way today. But many years ago, this was a much larger percentage of our population. Now, I'm not saying that fasting is the answer to our weight problem in the US, but I find it hard to argue that it wouldn't help. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't have a weight problem, and neither did our ancestors from just a few generations ago. Even dating back to just your grandparents, that generation likely wasn't raised on processed foods or snacking. Foods have changed in this country massively, and so has our eating patterns and routines as a culture. So unless you can grow your own food and only consume whole foods, then you're likely getting some sort of processed foods and even whole foods that aren't nearly as nutrient dense as they used to be. With food moving longer distances in trucks before you actually get the chance to consume it, the nutrition value does change as this time passes. And the meat and poultry industry are a pretty sad disgrace. We absolutely are lacking in quality nutrition, especially compared to earlier times. So that's a problem. But I am a believer that integrating fasting as a tool can be helpful to both combat the weight problem that many Americans face and boost nutrition. Well before we had a weight problem in this country, we were fasting. We were also consuming more nutrient-dense and whole foods. So why not try to incorporate both of these strategies to improve your life and overall health? By compartmentalizing the time in which you're eating, you're spending less time eating, which potentially means less food to purchase and more time for life and not cleaning up the kitchen, by the way, but also more money available to spend up on certain things as well. If your health is important to you, which I know it is because you're tuned in right here, you do want and need to prioritize whole foods as much as possible, limiting the processed stuff and just trying to focus on foods that have minimal ingredients. A big question that comes to mind when prioritizing whole foods and non-processed foods is, will this increase your grocery bill? And honestly, most likely not. If you are no longer buying as many prepackaged and processed foods and you're fueling up on whole foods, primarily, you're gonna fill up sooner. You're gonna be more satisfied and you won't feel that need to graze. Plus, if you cut out buying a lot of that prepackaged processed stuff, you're not spending as much money on those things, which actually can be quite expensive when you look at the total that you might be spending on snack foods or frozen meals or protein bars, for example. And of course, a little bonus is if you're healthier, you're no longer spending as much money on medications, whether it's over the counter or prescription, doctor visits, and the like. So while our food supply has changed, and I painted a very quick and bleak picture of that just a moment ago, it is unfortunately the way things are today. Unless you have the ability to source all your own food, which I don't, then we have to do the best we can with what we have access to. I believe it's our responsibility to, and a combination of both fasting and prioritizing whole foods can make a huge difference in how you feel and function, which really is, bottom line, super important. So educate yourself. There are so many tools out there for you to lean into. Aside from this podcast, I have several on my website. I'll link some in the show notes, but make sure you do. It's worth it to your health. When it comes to fasting, there are a million ways to cut the pie. So if you're new to it, don't let the mumbo jumbo crowd your ability to just try it. Like I said, educate yourself, but don't wait until you think you know everything just to dive in. Achievement and success don't happen when we sit around reading about how to do something. It happens when we act. So today, I am laying out 5 of the biggest fasting mistakes so that you can start without having that hiccup of waiting or delaying until you think you're, quote, 100% ready. You're freaking ready, so dive in and remember these 5 things as you do. The number 1 mistake that I see is fasting every day. And what I mean by this is doing longer fasts every day. Because remember, we do all fast when we're sleeping, so technically we do all fast every single day. But this is not what I'm referring to. When you get into longer fasting windows, you may notice that it's harder to eat as much food. So if you're fasting for, let's say, 20 hours, leaving a 4-hour eating window, you're probably consuming a meal and maybe a snack. And on days like this, you're most likely not getting enough in the way of your calorie needs. And that's totally fine. Having days where you're in a calorie deficit can be beneficial to your health and longevity. But if you fast too often for long periods of time and end up cutting your overall calories substantially, your metabolism will follow. In other words, it will slow down. Assuming that's not what you want, but you like doing longer fasts, try to limit them to just a few times per week. The second mistake is breaking your fast without realizing it. If you're trying to fast, it's important to understand that any amount of calories can inactivate some of fasting perks. With that being said, quantity and the type of calories do matter, and there are plenty of benefits that you can still experience without doing a water-only fast. A common offender in breaking your fast without realizing it is adding something like sugar or cream or collagen to your coffee. There is nothing wrong with adding these things to your coffee, but additions like this will break your fast. If you absolutely cannot stand the thought of drinking your coffee or tea black, I want you to first try drinking it cold. I personally don't love black hot coffee, but I find black cold coffee pretty delicious. And if you must add something to your coffee, try to keep the amount of calories that you add as low as possible. And refrain from those calories coming from carbs or sugar, which will have the greatest impact on your blood sugar. Try adding a few tablespoons of unsweetened almond milk, for example. An entire cup of unsweetened almond milk usually contains only around 30 calories and has 0 sugar. So if you're just adding a couple tablespoons, you're pretty darn close to 0 on that calorie scale. This is technically called dirty fasting, but like I said, there are still plenty of benefits that you will experience when it comes to fasting. Ideally, if you can fast for as long as you can with water only, and then have coffee or tea with minimal additions, you'll increase your benefits there as well. It may take some time for your taste buds to adjust if you're used to adding sweetened creamer and sugar and stuff like that to your coffee, but it's worth it. Remember, you can do hard things and save the special coffee for the weekend. So, mistake number 3 is not breaking your longer fast in a gut-friendly way. And I was definitely guilty of this myself before I educated myself better. I would sit down with a pretty large meal to break a longer fast, and often my stomach would hurt after. Go figure. So when we fast, our gut becomes super sensitive. Eating too much or choosing foods that are hard to digest can cause GI distress. So instead, you want to be intentional when you're breaking a longer fast. And you want to think simple and think small. What do I mean by a longer fast? Well, this is a bit personal because what you're used to really matters. But generally, if you're fasting for 20 or more hours, you would definitely want to be more mindful of this rule. Doing a longer fast means that you should be more strict when it comes to breaking your fast. But monitor how you feel and make these adjustments to break your fast in a kinder to your gut fashion if you experience any stomach pain after breaking a fast. The best thing to break your fast with is lean protein alone. This doesn't trigger an immune response and prevents your sensitive gut from being overwhelmed. On the other hand, if you jump right into a full meal, you could ignite the immune system and cause inflammation. This could not only make you feel crappy, but it also can mess up some of the benefits of your hard-earned fast. Some ideas to start with are bone broth, a protein shake, a small amount of chicken or maybe some collagen powder mixed in with some coffee, or maybe you go a plant-based protein shake to warm up your digestive tract. Then an hour or so later, you can tackle a regular meal. The fourth mistake is not emphasizing protein and whole foods during your eating window, especially a shorter feeding window. Just like not getting enough actual calories when you're consuming your food for the day in a short eating window, it's obviously also true that you could be short on actual nutrients. Make the most of your nutrition by prioritizing whole, unprocessed foods first and placing emphasis on protein. The final big mistake on today's list is neglecting hydration during your fast, and this includes taking in electrolytes. Proper hydration is not only important for quenching our thirst, but for enabling our body to function well. Electrolytes play a crucial role in maintaining your bodily functions while you're in a fasted state. We could go on and on about why electrolytes are so important, but here are some basic but very important reasons why you should prioritize hydration and electrolytes during your fast. When we fast, our bodies rely on stored energy to function, which can lead to fluid imbalances and dehydration. Electrolytes help to basically regulate fluid balance in the body, preventing these imbalances. They help to maintain blood pressure levels within a healthy range and in delivering nutrients to cells, as well as removing waste from the body efficiently. They help to keep your energy levels up and prevent dehydration from sneaking up on you, which makes you feel terrible. Think dry mouth, excessive thirst, fatigue, dizziness, dark-colored urine, and muscle cramps. The most important 3 electrolytes when it comes to preventing dehydration are sodium, potassium, and magnesium. If you're working out fasted, it's worth noting that they also play a significant role in exercise performance and muscle function. I always drink electrolytes when I'm working out, and you should too, especially if you're working out fasted. Fasting and nutrition are topics that I know can feel super overwhelming, but I am here to remind you that at their core, they're not. And anything that is worth working on to improve your health is worth learning more about and applying to your life. I hope that going through these 5 mistakes help you to feel more confident, not only in your fasting game, but in amping up your overall nutrition as well. If you have any questions, be sure to pop them below and I will do my best to answer them for you. Until next time, go make awesome things happen.